Good morning, welcome back. It's been a while since we've done a class in person. We did lives, but from the office. And we still don't have the plexiglass, so I'm still in the mask. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have proper plexiglass. I don't have to speak through a mask. There's a heart attack on Shmini Atzeres. So for the winter, a big part of the winter, after that, he didn't bring downstairs in shul on Shabbos, but after Shabbos from his room, and there was a microphone, and it was broadcasted and so on, unlike on Shabbos itself. But the Rabbi brings a pasuk from Shir HaShirim in discussing the relationship. The verse uses the term cannot extinguish the love, and rivers can't wash it away, which is an expression of the relationship that a Yid has with Hashem, and the feelings are so strong that even stormy waters, raging waters, won't mess it up. Now the Rabbeim speak about this. It's in Torah Erev from the Alter Rebbe and the Tzarim in the Mittler Rebbe and the Marash. I think also the Tzemach Tzedek speak pasuk, and they tell us what's waters. What does he mean when he says raging waters are not going to wash away the love that we have for Hashem? So he says it's two general things. There's worries of parnasa. When a person is worried about earning a livelihood, the rivers that are threatening to make him lose that feeling of that love towards Hashem. Second thing is machshaves, thoughts in worldly matters, physical things that he has to deal with that are, let's just say there are other sources of stress which are making it hard for the person. And normally you would think, or in regular circumstances, it takes away his focus and his feeling and his love towards whatever it is that he's loving because he's preoccupied. But the pasuk is saying that even though a Yid may go through those types of worries, of earning a living and of other physical involvements, nonetheless, it cannot extinguish this love. Which love? Every Yid has, single Yid has it. What's the double expression that great waters and also rivers won't extinguish it? Rivers, the idea of rivers is that the concept of a river is that it's constantly flowing. And sometimes when a person has a worry, it bothers him once in a while. But when it doesn't stop, when it's constant, it's persistently on his head, and he's worried the whole time, that makes it even more difficult. So not just when there's raging waters, but even when a river is non-stop flowing and the current and the pressure of it is on, it still doesn't have the ability to wash away the love that we have for Hashem, because it's real. It can't wash it away, and it can't extinguish the fire of love that we have for Hashem. Now, the first thing that Rabbi wants to address here is, what's this term, worries of parnasa? What do you mean, tirdes haparnasa? The pasuk tells us, "Igia kapecha kiseichel." Your hands will work hard and you'll eat. And it's a very known explanation that when the pasuk says your hands are going to work, it means specifically your hands work. The toil that's involved in earning a living is a physical type of toil. It's this person's hands, his body is working. But his mind and his heart are not toiling to that level. Even though we're living in a world that in order to earn a living, and the way Hashem created the world is you have to work, which takes physical effort. However, it's only a physical effort of the external part of the person. But his mind, which represents the inner part of himself, and his heart, really where his emotions are, they're not really so involved into earning the living. Basically, the way Hashem created the world is you have to put in effort. And sometimes it's not just effort, you have to toil, really work hard. But all you have to involve there is your external faculties, not your internal ones. Which is represented by the hand. The hand is an external part of the person, so all the external qualities we use them. But not the internal part and the more elevated levels of ourselves, the greater faculties that we have, we don't have to involve those into our work so much. Now, obviously, we live in a time and a place where, in any job that you have, even if it's physical, you still have to use your mind. You can't expect, but it's an external relationship with the work, and it's not your entire life and your whole focus. There's a certain part of you that's a little bit higher and elevated and deeper, and that doesn't get involved or caught up in the responsibilities of your job. Those elements of ourselves, which is our heart and our mind, they're designated, they're sacred to serve our Creator, to serve Hashem, which is not just a requirement, it's the purpose of why we're created, to serve Hashem. So we have certain elements of us that are called external, like our hands, like our physical work. And that part we use to do the work that we have to do, to earn a living. That's the way Hashem created the world. But the internal parts, our real emotions and what gets us, and our mind, and where we're really focused, that is designated to serve Hashem.
Is it for the general avoid, the physical avoid, or the avoid the Shabbat as well?
It's both. I mean, we're focusing on Avodah Shabbat, but it's in general mitzvahs that we do as well. The better parts of ourselves are reserved. We have to work. There's no choice. I mean, we also have to focus on what we work, but it's an external relationship. I got to do it. I'll do it well. I'll do it honestly. I'll do it fully, but I'm not going to get consumed in the sense that my entire existence is that. There's certain parts of me that are reserved for my purpose and the ultimate why I was created. And even the ones that are not the intellectual type of work, but it's still, you can't just, any job that you'll do, it takes your mind as well. One of the ideas, it says why tzedakah is such a big mitzvah, why it's equal to all the other mitzvahs, is because when you work to earn the living, your entire body is involved. You get tired after a day's work, right? Your whole body is involved. When you do a regular mitzvah, let's say you put on tefillin, you're using your hand to put on the tefillin, or using a certain part of your body. By tzedakah, you earn that money through your entire body because your whole body feels it. Internal, external. You work a day's work, you're tired. So what he's saying here is that even though there are certain jobs that require using the internal faculties as well, but you only use the amounts that you have to use. There's a limit. I have to do this work, and I do it well, and so on. But you don't get involved in all different types of tricks and various types of outsmarting the system and trying to figure out the back end, and you're doing it, and you're thinking of what you're doing, and you're focusing on it, and your heart and mind may be involved in the work, but you're not taking it too far where it's now consuming and conquering your heart and mind. The person gets into business. He has to do it. He has to focus. But if he thinks that the work and the results are going to come from his efforts, then he starts to think, is there a shortcut here? How could I do it even quicker? And tachbules, I don't know how to translate that, tricks that a person comes up with. That's an example that he's using his mind much more than the required amount. But when a person remembers that birchas Hashem hi tashir, it's the bracha of Hashem that makes you rich. It's not your efforts. You have to do your efforts because that's the way Hashem created the world. And you have to do it well. But you know that that's not really where it's coming from. It's like Hashem says, I'm going to give you riches, I'm going to give you success, I'm going to give you livelihood, but you have to show up to work and do the part, let's just say you're selling. You have to make those calls, you have to find the buyers, you have to sell, you have to deliver, all those stuff. So you know that you have to go through those steps because that's the way the world was created. But you also know that the real secret is not in those steps. It's Hashem's bracha. And therefore, while you're doing those steps, you don't get lost and consumed where your mind is totally involved and you're figuring out all these tricks and ways of going about it because you remember that it's from Hashem. It doesn't mean I could escape the process. I can't. It's the world we live in. But it's kapecha kisecha, my hands, my external part are working, and the bracha of Hashem is what's producing it. Or to use the way the Maimer explains it, the steps, the involvement is only a levush, it's a garment. It's the external part. You have to have a garment. But the garment is not the source of your livelihood. Let's take an example, clothing in general, right? When a person wears certain clothing, the Gemara tells us about great Ameira who would call clothes, he would call it honors. Because if you dress properly, so you have a certain respect. It demands it creates a certain image, and so on. But no one's going to tell you that the clothes is what does it. The clothes is an external part that adds to it. If you're going to put on tons of clothes, it's not going to help. It's actually going to make it worse. Okay, so clothing is an example where going to work and doing the effort is the clothing of the process. It has to happen. It's part of it. You can't get away without it. But it's not really the source of it. So he says that the great waters can't wash away the feeling that we have for Hashem and the love that Yidden have within ourselves and our neshama to God. He uses a term, worries of parnasa, which means even a person who's not at that level where he feels that everything comes from Hashem, and he is worried. He doesn't have enough money to pay his bills, and he can't finish the month. So he's worried. Now, if he was on a very high level and he really felt that everything comes from Hashem, he wouldn't be worried. He'd know Hashem's going to provide, I'm fine. But you're dealing with a person who's not on that level yet, and he still has those worries. Even such a person, the waters can't wash away his love, which is a major chiddush here. Don't think that the only love which won't get washed away by stresses of life is if you're on a high level and you really worked on yourself and you have a relationship to Hashem and you feel it. And then when the curveball comes in life, it's not going to destroy your feelings. No. Even a person that has worries about parnasa, if you have worries about parnasa, meaning you're stressed out about it, that means that you're not on the level where you know Hashem is going to provide, but you don't feel it to the extent that it affects your mood. So you're a lower level. Even such a person on a lower level, the love doesn't get washed away. Because every person, regardless what level you're at, every yid has a neshama, and in that neshama there's a love for Hashem, and it's a real love. And no matter what goes on in this world, and what goes on to the person, it won't stop that ava, that love to Hashem. Now let's get a little bit more Kabbalistic here. Now, what's the big chiddush here? If you say that every yid has an ava to Hashem, and we have a deep love to Hashem, and we're born with it, so nothing's going to wash it away. What's the major chiddush here? What's the major novelty here? What's the accomplishment? So he says the source of worries, it's called mayim rabim, raging waters, which means the stresses and pressures of life. Their root, where they really come from spiritually, is a very high level. They come from a world called tohu, a chaotic world. Before the world was created, there was a pre-world. Before the world that we live in with a organized creation, there was a spiritual world which busted. Okay? Without getting into all the details of why that had to exist and what the purpose of it was, but there was a spiritual world called tohu. That predates the world that we have, which is called tikkun, the world of power. Of course, the worries of life and the mayim rabim, the raging waters, they're going to be stronger than my neshama because they come first, which means they have higher spiritual levels. That's why they're called rabim, plural, because their source is from the Elam HaTohu, which is described as rabim, as many. And this is the chiddush, that even though the worries, the cause is coming from Tohu, which is before Tikkun, it still cannot extinguish the nefesh halikis, the feelings of the godly soul. And the reason is because we have a part of our neshama, yes, it comes from Tikkun, but there's a part of it, there's an essence of it, a deep part of it, which comes from it's rooted in the essence of Hashem, atmosphere and safe. And that level is higher than Tohu, even higher than the source of where these worries come from. It's like a coal, but more than a coal, it's like a flintstone. When you talk about fire, so you have fire that you could see, you have a flame, a candle's burning, great. But then you have a coal where you don't necessarily see the fire, but in the stone there's burning fire. You look at the stone, you don't necessarily see fire, but it's in there. So it's deep in there, but you don't see the flame. So despite not seeing it, there's fire in there. But then you have even deeper than that. You have a flintstone. Inside there's the ability to create fire. It's there. So it's so deep that even if water, wind, something else comes, it won't extinguish it because it has it inherently. So even though the neshama may come from a source which is lower than Tohu, which is where the mayim rabim, the raging waters, and the worries, the stresses come from money and from earning, from worldly matters. But there's an element to it which is even deeper than that. The essence of the neshama that ava, that love that we have, that we're referring to, it's rooted in the essence of Hashem. And that essence obviously is higher than Toyu as well. So the novelty that he's saying here is, the chiddush that he's applying here is that even though we have a world, and there's certain currents in this world, which are coming from a place that is very high spiritually. It's not just a figment, it's real. Nonetheless, we have a part of our neshama which is even deeper than that, and that's the chiddush here, that our love to Hashem is so deep, and it's so rooted in the essence of Hashem, that even these high levels can't wash it away. But now we're going to take this even further, and we'll conclude with the following for now. Not only can these waters not wash away the love, and they can't extinguish it, but it's going to do even more than that. It's going to lift it up. It's going to elevate it. It's going to make it even greater than before. So a neshama comes down into this world. A soul descends into this world. And it has worries and situations in life. Those worries that nobody should have, but the concerns, the physical things, they start to pressure the person. So stage number one that we said, and it's a big chiddush to say that, is that our love for Hashem does not get washed away. Very good. But now it's more than that. We're actually going to grow. The neshama is going to have an elevation. It's going to gain something in its existence. Even though it's a spiritual entity, it's going to grow as a result of that. So not only is it not going to ruin it, but it's going to help it grow. When there's a darkness that turns into light, the light is greater than the original light. Words of Chassidus, Yisrein ha'er haba min ha'cheshech. It's a quality, a greatness of light because it comes from darkness. So when a neshama comes down into this world and it goes through the whole process, and it's almost like it's working out because it has to fight against it, and it doesn't get washed away and it doesn't get extinguished, and its love is very strong, it gets even stronger as a result. That's why we say from the Zohar that in a place that Bali Tshuva stands, Tzaddikim Gemurim can't stand. In other words, the spiritual level where a returnee, someone that left Judaism and went down the wrong path and decided to come back, whether it's completely or it's in certain elements of serving Hashem, he decided not to do those things anymore, those bad things anymore, he's now on a greater level than a tzaddik is. Why? Because the tzaddik doesn't have the quality or the benefit of going down and coming back up. And the reality is that when a person has to go down and he has to go through something that's not less than desirable, then hopefully the process is that he grows because of it. A descent is in order to have an ascent. So not only does the realities of life and the worries and pressures and stresses not extinguish our relationship to Hashem, but it makes the neshama even stronger. It makes us even, we grow even more. And I'm going to just skip to the end because of time here, but the Rabbi gives the person an advice. And he says that the way to deal with these pressures and stresses is that when a person thinks about it and he says, yes, there's stress, yes, there are problems, yes, there are worries, but they're here in order for me to benefit from them. In other words, because I know it's going to lift me higher, it's going to take me to a greater place, that's when I think about that, I'm able to endure and overcome those challenges. So we're not looking for challenges, and maybe I shouldn't give anyone anything, but one of the pieces of advice that a person has in order to overcome it is to stop and think that this here is not here to break me, but it's here to help me grow. It's here to elevate me. To look at it as like the teva, the ark during the flood. It was in water, but it floats on top of the water. So the water could either threaten to drown the person or the thing, or it could lift it up. Now it's much higher. It's very, very high up. It's exactly what happens. Those water doesn't drown, wash away, or extinguish the love that we have for Hashem, but it elevates it. It brings it up even higher. Now we're floating on top of that water. So thanks to the water, we were elevated. So when a person sees that water coming, he could get all scared and worried and give up, or he could say, this is here to lift me. And that helps a person. And when a person does that in such a way, the Rabbi says, and with joy and gladness of heart, he's happy, that leads that he should have brachas from Hashem in everything that he needs. The Rebbe enumerates in this discourse, he enumerates everything that he needs in children, which means children literally, and it means all of the elements related to children. So it's nachas, it's the raising them, it's so on and so forth. Life, which is health and life. Umezeni, and sustenance, which is livelihood, money. And a person gets that with the ultimate completion, in other words, fully, with joy and gladness of heart, not through pain and difficulty, and in the spiritual sense and in the physical sense, and in the spiritual and physical together, which is a topic on its own of how we have the combination of spiritual and physical intertwined. Thanks very much for joining. It's glad to be back in doing the classes in Shul itself. And like, share, subscribe, and look forward to seeing you in a few hours.